Hello, 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 and welcome to Adventures with Alice. And we're going to cover installing a Prinsu Rack. So this is an image of my 4Runner with the Yakima basket. So when I purchased my 4Runner, I got a Yakima basket, which I thought, wow, this is going to be great. And it turns out that the basket really, for camping and overlanding, really the only thing good about it is if you have soft luggage or baggage, to be able to strap it down. For anything else, off-roading, like track boards, recovery gear, the Yakima rack is not the option of choice. And now this is an image of my 4Runner with the Prinsu rack, so you can kind of see the difference between the two. Really what I needed was something that wasn't going to cover the moonroof, was going to allow me to put a case so I could put my recovery gear in it. You know, the stuff that you hope you never have to use, but you don't want to have to dig through all the time when you're getting gear in and out of your vehicle, and that I could mount my track boards to without requiring me to get a rear bumper, and I could have a place to put my high lift jack and potentially a shovel. So I bottomed out on the Prinsu Rack mostly for reputation, ease of install, and cost, and it came rather quickly. So I unpackaged everything, and I recommend when you're doing a rack install to have a nice area that you can set everything up on. So I went ahead and put down a packing blanket and then organized all the parts that came from the packaging. So this is what I got in my Prinsu order. I got two of the mount whatever you want to mount bars, the two sidebars, a bunch of these little crossbars, rubber, and then gaskets I think for these special mounts, and then the header bar. And then I got, I don't know, this bag of bolts, which I think is a bolt on to the roof rails, this bag of bolts, and this bag of bolts. This warning and no instructions, so I need to go online and try to figure out which bolts go to which assembly. And then they sent some thread locker, and then I ordered an extra set of the tie down hooks. Alright, so here's a helpful hint number one when you're putting these rails in. You notice this rail has the two little holes. This rail doesn't. Don't start screwing it in until you make sure you got the rail set up. Also, it seems like the rack has extra holes, like here, next to these wide entries, and these are where the screws are supposed to go. So we'll find out later what these holes are for. So you've kind of got everything set out. You've got everything kind of pre-fitted together. One of the first things is this rail cover. This rail covers the bolt point for the roof rack. So before you move it to install it on your vehicle, you're going to need to take that rail off. And then the other thing before you finish putting in the wind deflector is you're going to need to measure to make sure that the rack is as close to square as you can get it. So I just measured from one corner to one corner, the other corner to the other corner, to kind of square it up. And then I hand tightened as much as I could the screws. And if you're going to be installing it, you know, relatively soon, I wasn't, because I needed to measure everything out for the accessories. This is a good time to go ahead and put your Loctite in and get everything kind of tied down, because if you're going to be moving it from there onto your car, then you can do the final tightening. So I'm working on the wind deflector, and I think this is the McFiddly part. You can see these little tabs here. These will slide into that rail there. So it looks like you have to get all these little tabs on the rack first, or on this plate first, and then slide it in. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so we got all the little McFiddly tabs installed. You can see that. And then this is the bar we need to install. You notice there's no insets drilled in, it's all flat. So we're gonna try to get this slid in. Okay, kind of what you can see here is how it slides in. with these little spacers on the fairing. And I dorked around with it for a couple minutes, and the easiest way is just lay it flat on the table and then manually slide it in, and leave these as loose as you can until you get it slid in, which makes it a little bit easier. Okay, now that I got that little thing figured out, it's all slid in on the rack. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and squirt a little Loctite in there and then tighten the whole assembly down. Okay, well, lesson number 2 is there's nowhere to actually get in there to put the Loctite, so now I'm going to pull this off, as you can see here, and then actually put Loctite on these, slide it back in, and then screw the whole thing down. So when you're doing this, get your little tabs on, put your Loctite on it, lay it on a flat surface, slide your bar on, and then lock everything down. Okay, and that's the fairing all tightened down. I actually got some blue locker. I like that stuff better. And then this is all on. So we're good. All right, so this is a rack all pre-assembled. And one call out on the rubber wind deflector gasket is it's easy enough to put it on by hand, but trust me, it is not on. So get yourself a little rubber mallet and just tap it on, because there's a metal insert inside that gasket that prevents it from locking on to the wind deflector. So that way, if you just tap it with the rubber mallet, it will seat itself. The other thing is you need to cut that rubber gasket exactly to fit, because that's a very tight tolerance fit between the wind deflector and the frame. And if that gasket, because of that metal, is, 3 millimeters out, it's not going to seat properly. And then the other thing is on the attach anything panels, they come with some plastic inserts. Those inserts didn't really work for me, and the tabs on the ends of those didn't actually slide into the holes. I don't think it's a problem, but maybe it was something that I did on the install. So if you have any good comments on how I can fix that, please leave them for me. So now that all the super fiddly stuff was done, now came the kind of fun part, which is figuring out how to mount the accessories. So here's just some measurements of like what I was looking like, how big the rails were. And one of the key things I want to call out is it is going to be much easier for you to figure out how you're going to mount your accessories onto your rack if your rack is on the ground. I don't care if you're 6'7". It's still kind of a pain to do this when it's on the vehicle. So if you have the opportunity to go ahead and lay out what you want to put on the rack, figure out what type of mounting strategy you're going to employ, get everything marked, pre-tested, and then install it on the vehicle, that in the end is going to be a time saver. So I didn't cover too much on taking off the pre-existing Yakima rack, but I do want to highlight that when you're removing the plastic housing that covers the rack bolts to the vehicle, about 3 or 4 fingers from each edges is actually where the lock tab is. So you can just slide your screwdriver under that and pry it open. Also be sure, unlike me, that you put a rag between your screwdriver and the vehicle to prevent any scratches. So once you got your rack figured out, where you're gonna mount everything, and the other thing I wanna call out is go ahead and toss a couple extra eye bolts in your mounting scheme for the roof rack, meaning on the rails where you're gonna mount your accessories, because trying to put those on after you've already got everything attached and it's on the roof rack is like, a couple hour job. So if you want to throw a couple extra eyes in there, you're just not sure what you're going to use them for, go ahead and do that. And then once you have your old rack off, it's pretty straightforward. You clean the holes, you splooge the holes, you put your spacers in, you get somebody to help you lift your rack on. The major call out here is make sure the rack is square on the vehicle before you tighten your screws down. So look at it from the front, look at it from the back, tweak it in so it's just perfect. Then once you're done with that, you can put all your accessories on. At this point, I had to get my husband to help me cut some of the bolts out of the Pelican case, mostly because was too short. And then get everything screwed down, tightened down. Be sure you put Loctite on everything. And then this is what the 4Runner looks like now with the roof rack, the track boards, the high lift jack, and the Pelican case. And then for those of you who are interested, I'm going to do another video that shows you actually what's in my recovery case. And then I've got a Nitto trail grappler video coming soon. So look forward to talking to you guys. And remember, leave some comments.